Captain Sarah Chun adjusted her tactical vest one final time before stepping out of the crashed shuttle. The alien jungle around her buzzed with strange sounds and glowing plants that seemed to pulse with their own heartbeat. 3 days ago, she had been leading a routine diplomatic mission to the Kepler 442b colony. Now she stood on an uncharted world. Her ship destroyed, her crew scattered or dead, and something very large hunting her through the dense undergrowth. The distress beacon in her pack had been broadcasting for 60 hours with no response. Earth was 12 light-years away, and even if anyone received the signal, help wouldn't arrive for weeks. Sarah had accepted that fact on day one. Survival meant relying on herself, her training, and the stubborn human refusal to simply lie down and die. She checked her sidearm. A military-grade plasma pistol with enough charge for maybe 30 shots. Her combat knife hung secure on her thigh, and her field pack contained basic supplies scavenged from the wreckage. Not much against whatever had been stalking her since planetfall, but she'd worked with less during her years as a colonial marine. The trees ahead rustled without any wind. Sarah froze, every sense alert. Something moved through the canopy above, branches snapping under immense weight. She'd caught glimpses of her pursuer over the past day, scales that shifted color like liquid mercury, claws longer than her forearm, and eyes that glowed amber in the perpetual twilight beneath the jungle canopy. Local wildlife, she'd assumed at first. But the creature's behavior suggested intelligence. It herded her, cut off escape routes, and seemed to be playing with her rather than simply attacking. That worried her more than mindless aggression would have. The undergrowth exploded 20 meters to her left. Sarah spun, weapon raised, as something massive crashed through the smaller trees like they were saplings. Her first clear look at the predator made her breath catch. It stood 4 meters tall on powerful hind legs, with a serpentine neck that added another 2 meters to its height. Its hide rippled with adaptive camouflage, and those amber eyes fixed on her with unmistakable intelligence. But it wasn't just the size that made her gut clench. Scars covered the creature's hide, precise, deliberate marks that looked almost ceremonial. This wasn't just a predator. This was something that understood concepts like status, territory, and dominance. The way it held itself, the calculated slowness of its approach, everything about its body language screamed apex predator that had never met anything capable of challenging it. Sarah kept her weapon trained on center. Mass but didn't fire. 30 shots wouldn't bring down something that size unless she hit exactly the right spots, and she had no idea where those might be. Better to wait, observe, and look for an opportunity. The creature stopped just outside optimal firing range and studied her. Its head tilted slightly, and she caught a flash of something that might have been curiosity in those burning eyes. Then it opened its mouth and spoke. "Small thing. Weak thing. You run well for prey, but the hunt ends now." The voice came from somewhere deep in its chest, a rumbling bass that she felt in her bones as much as heard. But the words were clear, precise English with only a slight accent she couldn't place. Universal translators were common technology, but this felt different. This creature had learned her language. "You speak English," Sarah said, keeping her voice steady despite her racing heart. "I speak the tongues of many prey species. It makes the hunts more educational." The creature's lips pulled back in what might have been a smile, revealing rows of serrated teeth. "Your kind has been most entertaining. So much noise when they die. So much fear." Her crew. This thing had killed her crew. Sarah felt the familiar cold settle into her chest, the same ice-water calm that had gotten her through the siege of Proxima Station and the Martian uprising. Anger was useful, but only when controlled. Only when it served a purpose. "How many of my people have you killed?" she asked. "All but you, small warrior." 6 soft things that screamed and begged before the end. "But you—" The creature's head tilted again, studying her like a specimen. "You do not run in straight lines. You think. You plan. You will make a worthy final hunt. 6 dead. Her entire crew?" Sarah had trained with those people, fought alongside them, shared meals and stories and the quiet moments between stars. Now they were gone, reduced to entertainment for this overgrown lizard's amusement. "I'm honored," she said, and meant it. Not at being chosen for some twisted game, but at representing her species in this moment. These creatures clearly thought of humans as prey animals, weak things to be hunted for sport. Time to correct that misconception? The predator's eyes narrowed. "You show no fear. Even now, facing certain death, you stand straight. Fascinating. What are you called, small warrior?" "Captain Sarah Chun, Colonial Marines, United Earth Fleet." She spoke each word clearly, formally. If this was to be humanity's first contact with this species, she'd represent them properly. "Chun," the creature repeated, tasting the name. "I am Vexcar, Alpha of the Bloodclaw Pack, Hunter of 17 Worlds, Breaker of Armies." The titles rolled off its tongue like a ritual recitation. "And you, Chun of the Humans, will kneel before you die." All prey kneels in the end. Sarah felt her lips curve in a smile that had nothing pleasant about it. "That's where you're wrong, Vexcar. I don't kneel. I shatter." The Alpha's head snapped back slightly, clearly not expecting defiance. Its claws extended with wet scraping sounds, and the bioluminescent patches along its neck flared brighter. Bold words from prey, but words change nothing. "Kneel, and I will make your death swift. Make me." For a heartbeat, the jungle fell silent. Even the ambient insect sounds seemed to pause, as if the very ecosystem recognized the challenge that had just been issued. Vexcar's eyes widened, then narrowed to glowing slits. "You dare challenge an alpha? A mere prey animal thinks to match herself against the apex hunter of 17 worlds?" The creature's voice rose to a roar that shook leaves from the trees. "I have torn apart your kind's machines. I have scattered your armies. I have made sport of your greatest warriors. What could one small, soft thing possibly do against me?" Sarah's smile widened. "Why don't you come find out?" Vexcar's control snapped. With a bellow that split the air, the massive predator launched itself forward, claws extended and jaws wide. Sarah dove to the side, rolling behind a fallen log as the Alpha's charge carried it past her position. Claws raked deep gouges in the wood where she'd been standing. She came up firing. 3 quick shots sent her mass. The plasma bolt struck Vexcar's hide and dispersed across its scales like water. Adaptive armor, probably bioengineered. The creature spun with shocking speed for something its size and backhanded the log. Ancient wood exploded into splinters, and the shockwave sent Sarah tumbling. She rolled to her feet, checking herself for injuries. Bruised but functional. The Alpha stalked toward her, moving with predatory grace. "Did you think your primitive weapons could harm me, prey? I have walked through the fire of your ship's weapons and laughed." Vexcar's voice carried cruel amusement. "But your defiance is noteworthy. Perhaps I will keep you alive longer than planned. Break you slowly." Sarah backed toward a cluster of the glowing trees, mind racing through tactical options. The creature was fast, strong, and apparently immune to her weapons. But it was also arrogant, overconfident. That was something she could work with. "You talk too much," she said, and fired 3 more shots at the Alpha's feet. The plasma bolts struck the spongy ground and ignited the methane-rich moss growing there. Flames spread rapidly through the bioluminescent vegetation, and Vexcar leaped back with a snarl of surprise. Sarah didn't waste time admiring her handiwork. She sprinted deeper into the jungle, using the spreading fire as cover. Behind her, the Alpha roared in fury, the sound of splintering trees marking its pursuit. The real hunt had begun. And contrary to Vexcar's expectations, Sarah Chun had no intention of being the prey. She'd studied the creature's movements during their conversation, noted the slight favor it showed its left side, the way it tested each step before committing its full weight. Adaptive armor was impressive, but it came with limitations. Everything did. Sarah had survived 3 colonial wars by understanding one fundamental truth: there was no such thing as an apex predator. Everything could be killed if you were smart enough, stubborn enough, and willing to pay the price. Vexcar was about to learn what humans meant by refusing to kneel. The hard way, the jungle exploded behind her as the Alpha burst through the burning vegetation. Its hide smoking but undamaged. Sarah caught a glimpse of those amber eyes in her peripheral vision, burning now with something beyond hunger. This had become personal. Good. Personal meant angry. Angry meant mistakes, and Sarah Chun had built her entire career on making her enemies' mistakes cost them everything. Sarah Chun ran through the burning jungle with calculated desperation, every step planned even as Vexcar's thunderous pursuit shook the ground behind her. The Alpha was faster in a straight line, but she'd noticed something during their confrontation. The creature tested its footing constantly. It was heavy, powerful, but cautious about unstable ground. She angled toward a section of jungle, where morning moisture had collected into a marshy depression. Her boots splashed through ankle-deep water as bioluminescent organisms scattered like living stars. Behind her, Vexcar's roar of frustration echoed through the trees as its massive claws sank into the soft earth. "Clever prey," the Alpha snarled, its voice carrying clearly across the marsh. "But cleverness only delays the inevitable." Sarah reached solid ground and spun to assess her pursuer. Vexcar had slowed considerably, each step now deliberate as it navigated the treacherous footing. The creature's adaptive camouflage flickered as it moved, trying to match the shifting colors of the marsh plants. She fired 2 shots at the water near the Alpha's feet. The plasma bolts superheated the methane-rich liquid, sending up clouds of steam and burning gas. Vexcar reared back, amber eyes narrowing with what might have been grudging respect. "You understand terrain, small warrior. Your kind's reputation for adaptation appears earned." The creature's tone had shifted slightly, less dismissive than before. "But fire cannot protect you forever." Sarah reloaded her weapon's power cell while studying the Alpha's movements. Vexcar was learning too, adjusting its tactics. The creature had stopped charging blindly and now moved with more caution, amber eyes constantly scanning for threats, intelligence, real, calculating intelligence that could adapt and learn. That made this more dangerous, but also more interesting. Sarah had fought sentient opponents before, pirates, revolutionaries, rogues. They all shared one weakness. They could be predicted once you understood how they thought. "Tell me something, Vexcar," she called across the marsh. "How many other species have you hunted?" The Alpha's head tilted in that curious gesture she was beginning to recognize. 17 worlds, as I said. "Why does prey seek conversation?" "Just wondering about your experience." Sarah backed toward a cluster of the larger trees, their trunks easily 3 meters across. "Must get boring, hunting the same types over and over." Vexcar began moving again, testing each step as it crossed the marshy ground. Each species offers different challenges. The Ketherans relied on technology and numbers. The Vorth had natural armor but limited intelligence. The Zendar could fly but were fragile. The creature's voice carried the tone of a hunter recounting trophies. "Your humans combine several interesting traits: tool use, pack tactics, environmental adaptation. But you lack the physical gifts to truly threaten an Alpha." "Physical gifts are overrated," Sarah said, continuing to back toward the tree line. She was learning valuable information from this conversation. Vexcar's species hunted other sentients as sport, had wiped out multiple civilizations, and considered themselves the apex of evolution. Classic predator mentality, successful enough to become complacent. Spoken like weak prey attempting to justify its weakness. Vexcar had reached the edge of the marsh and was picking up speed again. "I have heard such words from dying warriors of dozen species. The strong devour the weak. This is the order of things." Sarah reached the massive trees and immediately began climbing. Her military training included vertical movement in hostile environments, and these trees had plenty of handholds where their bark had been scarred by some local parasite. Vexcar burst from the marsh with explosive speed, claws extended. But Sarah was already 4 meters up the trunk, scrambling higher as the Alpha's swipe missed her boots by centimeters. Deep gouges appeared in the wood where those claws struck. "Running vertical now, prey?" Vexcar circled the tree, looking up with those burning eyes. "Trees cannot save you." "I am patient." "You must come down eventually." Sarah reached a thick branch 20 meters up and paused to catch her breath. From this height, she could see the layout of the surrounding jungle more clearly. The crash shuttle was visible as a distant smoke column, and between here and there lay a network of ravines and rocky outcroppings she hadn't noticed from ground level. More importantly, she could see evidence of the Alpha's previous hunts. Scattered clearings where trees had been torn down or burned, the wreckage of what looked like other crashed ships, and the bleached remains of bones too large to be local wildlife. "How long have you been hunting on this world?" she called down. "Curious prey. This world has been my hunting ground for 6 of your years. The Galactic Council designated it a preserve after my pack. Convinced them of our territorial rights." Sarah felt ice form in her stomach. The Galactic Council, humanity had been trying to make contact with that organization for decades. If they'd already met Vexcar species and been intimidated into giving them entire worlds as hunting preserves, that suggested something very bad about the balance of power in this region of space. "The Council just handed you a planet?" Vexcar's laugh was a rumbling sound like distant thunder. "We demonstrated our capabilities on 3 of their enforcement fleets. They quickly became reasonable about our needs. Your species will learn the same lessons when we reach your worlds." That revelation hit Sarah like a physical blow. This wasn't just about her and her crew. Vexcar's people were actively planning to hunt humanity on a species-wide level, and they had the Galactic Council too terrified to interfere. She thought about Earth, about the colonies, about billions of humans who had no idea what was coming for them. Then she thought about her crew, died screaming while this creature amused itself. The ice in her stomach crystallized into something harder than diamond. "You know what the interesting thing about humans is, Vexcar?" Sarah began working her way around the trunk, staying out of the Alpha's direct line of sight. "Enlighten me, pray." "We're persistence hunters. Back on our homeworld, we used to chase prey animals for days, weeks even, until they collapsed from exhaustion. Most predators can't do that. They're built for short bursts of power, then they need to rest." Sarah reached a point where another tree's branches intertwined with her refuge. "But humans? We just going." She leaped to the adjacent tree as Vexcar roared below. The Alpha immediately began climbing, its claws finding purchase on the bark with ease. But Sarah was already moving again, branch to branch, tree to tree, using the canopy as a highway. Vexcar followed with surprising agility for something its size. The creature's adaptive muscle structure let it match her movements, but Sarah wasn't trying to outclimb her pursuer. She was leading it. Somewhere specific, the rocky ravines she'd spotted from above cut through this section of jungle like old wounds. According to her suit's geological scanner, they were formed by seismic activity. This planet was tectonically unstable. The ravines would have sharp edges, loose stone, and if she was lucky, the kind of unstable footing that might matter to a creature that weighed several tons. Sarah swung from the last viable tree branch and dropped into a controlled fall, rolling as she hit the rocky ground near the ravine's edge. Vexcar landed behind her with earth-shaking force, amber eyes blazing with predatory joy. "No more trees to scurry up, prey. Time to face me properly." Sarah backed toward the ravine, testing each step. The stone here was different from the jungle floor, harder, more stable, but with loose fragments that could shift under weight. Perfect. "You want to know what else humans are good at, Vexcar?" She drew her combat knife, the monomolecular blade gleaming in the alien sunlight. "We're really good at making bigger things fall down." Vexcar charged. Sarah waited until the last possible moment, then dove to the side. The Alpha's momentum carried it past her, claws scraping stone as it tried to adjust course. Sarah rolled to her feet and slashed at the creature's ankle with her knife. The monomolecular edge was designed to cut through starship hull plating. It parted Vexcar's adaptive scales like they were paper, drawing a line of alien blood and a roar of genuine pain. The Alpha spun faster than something that size had any right to move, backhanding Sarah across the small clearing. She hit the rock wall hard, her vision exploding with stars. But she'd felt the knife connect, seen the wound. Vexcar wasn't invincible. "First blood to the prey," Vexcar snarled, golden ichor dripping from the gash. "I admit, you have surprised me, shun of the humans. But surprises end now." The Alpha's stance changed, becoming more cautious, more professional. No more casual swipes or lazy charges. This was a warrior acknowledging a real opponent. Sarah spat blood and checked her weapon. The plasma pistol had survived the impact, and she still had 23 shots remaining. Her ribs ached and her left shoulder felt wrong, but everything still worked. She'd fought through worse. "I'm just getting started," she said, and meant it. For the first time since their hunt began, Vexcar's expression showed something other than predatory confidence. Those amber eyes held calculation now, respect, and just maybe. The first hint of uncertainty, the Alpha had expected weak prey. Instead, it had found something that bit back. Sarah Chun wiped blood from her mouth and studied her opponent with new eyes. Vexcar was no longer the supremely confident apex predator that had cornered her in the jungle. The wound on the Alpha's ankle had changed everything, not just because it proved the creature could be hurt, but because of how Vexcar was responding to injury. The Alpha favored the wounded leg slightly, and those burning amber eyes now tracked Sarah's every movement with hypervigilant intensity. But most telling was the way Vexcar's head kept turning slightly, as if listening for something. Other pack members, perhaps, or simply the disorienting experience of facing prey that fought back effectively. "Your kind has ruled 17 worlds," Sarah said, circling slowly around the rocky clearing. "Tell me, how many of those species actually fought back?" Vexcar's lips pulled back in a snarl, revealing those serrated teeth. "All prey fights when cornered. The difference is that fighting and winning are not the same thing. But you've never faced anything like humans before, have you?" Sarah kept moving, staying near the ravine's edge where the loose rock might work in her favor. "I can tell from how you hunt. You're used to terrifying your prey into running, then picking them off when they panic. Classic ambush predator behavior. You speak as if you understand predation, prey." Vexcar began stalking forward, but with more caution now. But understanding and survival are also different things. Sarah's tactical mind cataloged everything she'd learned about her opponent. Vexcar was physically superior in almost every measurable way. Stronger, faster, armed with natural weapons and adaptive armor. But the Alpha was also a product of its environment. Shaped by millennia of being the absolute apex of its food chain, that kind of dominance created patterns, expectations, weaknesses. "You know what your real problem is, Vexcar?" Sarah drew her sidearm and checked the charge indicator. 23 shots. "You've never had to get creative." She fired 3 quick bursts at the loose rock above the Alpha's head. The plasma bolts superheated the stone, causing thermal expansion and fractures. Chunks of debris rained down, forcing Vexcar to leap sideways toward the ravine's edge. Sarah was already moving, sprinting toward her opponent with the knife extended. But instead of attacking directly, she slashed at the Alpha's good ankle as she dove past. The monomolecular blade parted scales and muscle, drawing another roar of pain and rage. Now both of Vexcar's ankles were wounded. Not severely enough to cripple the creature, but enough to affect its balance and mobility. The Alpha spun to face her, amber eyes blazing with fury. "Clever prey thinks to reduce my mobility. But you only delay." Sarah's next plasma bolt caught Vexcar directly in those glowing eyes. The Alpha's adaptive armor could disperse energy across its hide, but eyes were always vulnerable. Vexcar shrieked and reared back, claws clutching at its face. Not blinded, the creature's biology was too robust for that, but definitely impaired. Sarah used the Alpha's momentary disorientation to put some distance between them. She needed to think, to plan. Wounding Vexcar was satisfying, but the creature still outmassed her by a factor of 20. She needed a force multiplier. "You hurt me, prey," Vexcar snarled, blinking rapidly to clear its vision. "I will make you suffer for that presumption. Getting angry?" Sarah backed toward another cluster of rocks, noting how they were balanced. "Good, angry predators make mistakes?" "I am Vexcar." Alpha of the Bloodclaw Pack. I have torn apart armies and shattered fleets. The creature's roar shook stones loose from the ravine walls. What could one small, wounded prey possibly do to threaten me? Sarah smiled, and this time it was genuinely warm. Oh, Vexkar. You still don't get it, do you? This isn't about what I can do to you. She fired her remaining shots in rapid succession. Not at the Alpha, but at the carefully chosen points around the ravine, where geological stress had created natural fracture lines. 20 plasma bolts struck stone that had been weakened by eons of seismic activity. The ravine began to collapse. Vexkar's eyes went wide with sudden understanding. The Alpha tried to leap clear, but wounded ankles betrayed its timing. Tons of stone cascaded down, and the mighty predator disappeared beneath an avalanche of rock and debris. Silence fell over the jungle, broken only by the settling sounds of displaced stone. Sarah stood at the edge of the devastation, breathing hard and checking herself for new injuries. Her ribs still ached, and her left shoulder was definitely dislocated. But she was alive. More importantly, she was still standing. A low rumble came from beneath the rubble, followed by the sound of shifting stones. Sarah sighed and reloaded her weapon. Of course it wouldn't be that easy. Vexkar erupted from the rock pile like an ancient god of destruction, scales torn and bleeding, but very much alive. The Alpha's adaptive armor had protected it from the worst of the crushing force, though barely. One arm hung useless, and golden ichor flowed from multiple wounds, but those amber eyes still burned with predatory intensity. Impossible, Vexkar gasped, pulling itself free of the debris. No prey animal should possess such cunning, such calculation. Sarah kept her weapon trained on the Alpha while backing toward higher ground. That's because you've been thinking about this all wrong. I'm not prey, Vexkar. I never was. What are you then, small warrior? I'm a human being. Sarah's voice carried the weight of absolute conviction. We're the species that looked at saber-toothed cats and said, I want one of those as a pet. We're the ones who saw lightning and said, I bet we can harness that. We took rocks and sticks and built starships. We looked at death itself and said, not today. Vexkar struggled to its feet, swaying slightly from blood loss and trauma. The creature was badly wounded, but far from finished. Pretty words, but words change nothing. I'm still Alpha. You're still thinking like a predator, Sarah interrupted. But humans aren't just predators, Vexkar. We're survivors. And the thing about survivors is that we don't need to be stronger or faster or tougher than our enemies. She pulled a small device from her tactical vest, the distress beacon she'd been carrying since the crash. With quick fingers, she began adjusting its settings. We just need to be more stubborn. The beacon's emergency overload function was designed as a last resort, a way to create a massive electromagnetic pulse that might disable enemy electronics at the cost of destroying the device. But with the right modifications, channeling all that energy through the beacon's quantum transmitter array. What are you doing, Prey? Something humans are really, really good at, Sarah said, completing her modifications. Improvising. She hurled the modified beacon directly at Vexkar's chest. The Alpha's reflexes were still superb despite its injuries. Vexkar caught the device easily, looking at it with confusion. A simple communication device? What could the beacon's quantum transmitter? Detonated with the force of a small sun, quantum energy erupted outward in a sphere of annihilation that consumed everything within a 50-meter radius. Trees, rocks, and one very surprised apex predator simply ceased to exist as the fundamental forces holding their atoms together temporarily forgot how to function. Sarah, having thrown herself behind a boulder the moment the beacon left her hand, felt the wash of exotic radiation pass over her like a warm wind. When the light faded and her vision cleared, she stood up to survey the results. Where Vexkar had been standing, there was now a perfectly spherical crater filled with what looked like glass made from melted stone. The quantum detonation had been contained and brief, but within its radius, molecular bonds had simply dissolved. The Alpha of the Bloodclaw Pack, hunter of 17 worlds, breaker of armies, was gone. Not just dead, erased, as if it had never existed at all. Sarah checked her chronometer. The entire confrontation had lasted less than 2 hours. In that time, she'd gone from hunted prey to the thing that ended an apex predator's existence. Not through superior strength or natural weapons, but through planning, adaptation, and sheer bloody-minded human stubbornness. She activated her suit's emergency communicator, broadcasting on all Coalition frequencies. "This is Captain Sarah Chung, Colonial Marines. I'm stranded on an uncharted world in the Kepler 442 system. My crew is dead, but I've made contact with a hostile alien species that represents a potential threat to human space." Sarah looked at the glassed crater where Vexcar had been and felt a grim satisfaction. "I've neutralized the immediate threat, but recommend immediate investigation of this species and their relationship with the Galactic Council. These creatures hunt sentient beings for sport and have apparently intimidated the Council into giving them entire worlds as preserves." She paused, thinking about Vexcar's final moments of confusion when faced with something that refused to behave like prey. "For the record," Sarah added, "they're not as tough as they think they are." Tune out. 6 days later, a Coalition rescue fleet arrived to find Captain Sarah Chun waiting calmly in her improvised shelter. Having catalogued the wreckage of 17 different crashed ships and documented evidence of systematic predation across multiple species, her report would eventually lead to the Coalition's first successful contact with the Galactic Council, a relationship built on the simple foundation that humanity was clearly not prey to be hunted or intimidated. The Blood Claw Pack's reign of terror across 17 worlds ended when Word SP